Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker. My name is Glen and Matt, alongside, as always, Matt Farrar. Week 9 in the NFL in the Bucs. Jets almost pulled it out. Giants beat the Redskins again, the only team they could ever beat. We'll get into that. But to begin, Matt, the Dolphins are 2-0.
You got that right.
You love it. You love it. The floor is all yours. How excited on a scale of 1 to 10 are you right now about what the Dolphins are doing?
So I'll focus more on the team first right now. So I mean, you're sitting at 5-3. You had 5-3 right now. You're in the playoffs. You're sitting at the 7th spot right now, above the Browns, which is very big. This is, again, I know it's only halfway through, but I mean, 5-3 halfway. That's about like that's a couple wins, I would say, more than what we kind of thought about prior to the season.
That's on pace for 10-6.
That's what I mean. So you go 9-7 / 10-6 after a full-on tear down where you got 5 wins, but you still overachieved. I mean, that just puts to me, that would put Flores in Coach of the Year category without a doubt. Obviously, Tomlin might have something to say, but just to see, again, they rattled off 4 straight wins, and then a couple of their losses besides the Patriots one opening day, which they got beat up pretty bad, but still by 10. They had a lead in the 4th quarter against Buffalo, and then Seattle, the same thing. They had a lead, but just defense kind of lost it. And now you're seeing that the defense is stepping up and they're holding on to games. And obviously, I mean, you score 34 points like they did, you deserve to win. And it just, again, you're really seeing an excitement from the fan base and just all over Twitter and stuff like that. And obviously, outside of I'll get into him a little after, but just the team as a whole and just them performing and Flores doing what he's doing, it's like, holy shit, like, is this a real football team? Like, is this what winning close games feels like? It's absolutely crazy.
And we forecasted this last episode, Matt. We said bringing in Tua, it's not only good for the offense, but it revitalizes the entire roster. And the defense really didn't need any more motivation than what they were already getting. I saw a stat going into week 9. They were giving up 18 points a game, which was like best in the league. The 31 from the Cardinals, that's going to bring that up, and that's
but they're still only they're at 4th
because with Kyler Murray, who's absolutely fantastic, you can't knock him whatsoever. But other than the 31 they gave up in a win anyway, their defense has been absolutely fantastic, and everything they've done up until they decided to make this move at quarterback has just completely been put to another level because they are getting this shot of adrenaline and this vote of confidence by putting into that's their franchise saying, hey, we think you guys can do things this year. And they put into and to this point, through 2 games, Tua kind of managed the first game, didn't get unleashed in the first game. But in this game, 20 for 28, 248, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers, which is extremely important. The defense had a few takeaways, and I think they had a score, right?
Yeah, scoop and scores. Yeah, strip sack, scoop and score, and then after that, they didn't really. I mean, again, they didn't really do much to contain Kyler until back end of the 4th quarter, where they had to make a stop, and they did.
Yeah, they did just enough, which is all you need to do at times. I mean, you're not going to shut down every single team every single week, but this team is playing with an extra pep in their step. They're playing with an extra, added motivation, and that's what you get when your owner and when your decision makers in the front office saying, let's put him in. Let's put Tua in. Let's see how far he can go. And everybody gets pumped up because everyone loves seeing, this franchise guy, this everyone in Miami heralds the savior of the franchise. He gets thrown in, and now everybody's pumped. The defense is pumped. The offense is pumped. The coaching staff is thrilled. And most importantly, really, is the fan base. The fan base is really into this Dolphins team for the first time. And I don't know. I don't follow. You obviously are a Dolphins fan. You follow the fan base much more than I do. But 2 decades, has there been this much talk about the Dolphins ever?
Never.
In the media and in the fan base?
I type in after the game on Monday, I typed in just Miami Dolphins on YouTube, and there's Nick Wright talking about him, Stephen A. Yeah. He's on First Take, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, and Rich Eisen, like they're everywhere. And this is something that has never happened. Even when they made the playoffs and they were a 10-win team, they've never been talked about this much. And I think a large portion of that is Tua, but I think almost an equal portion of that is just kind of Flores. We've never had this exciting kind of league-leading team. Obviously, you're getting that with the defense. and that you're just seeing a buzz around them, and people are actually saying, all right, the Dolphins are like a good team, and they're flirting with a great defense. But there's just something there. Like when you go back, and I rewatched the highlights of the Dolphin Cardinals game like 1,000 times, but there was only 4,000 people there, and the place was absolutely electric, just back and forth with Kyler and Tua. And obviously that was kind of the storyline, just like, oh, this is how it's going to be for years to come. And I think you really saw just an absolutely amazing game, and it just really kind of could have foreshadowed just what's going to happen in the next, hopefully, say 5+ years, just throughout the league landscape. It just they're again, they're firing on all cylinders right now, and I think a large part of it is just the youth movement that they have. You just have a ton of just selfless guys, and they're all young, and I think that helps a lot too, because sometimes you get the older vets that just like they're on their last leg, or they already have the money, they already got paid, and we talked about this a lot about money being a motivator, and it's just human nature. And I think this youth movement that they have, I mean, they have two guys that are 30 or over, and one of them is Kyle Van Noy, and the other one's Fitzpatrick, who doesn't obviously play anymore. So just having this group of basically kids go out there and try to win games with this younger head coach, I think is a recipe for success.
When I think of sports teams, I always equate to what I know most, and that's the Yankees. And what you just said reminded me of this in that 2010, 2011, 2012 era of the Yankees, when the Jeters and the Pettits and the Riveras were on the way out. They were making the playoffs, but if you watch highlights of those playoff games, Matt, like the fans aren't really into it. And then you
Agreed.
look 5 years later in 2017, when the Judges and the Gleyber's and the Sanchez, they come up, all of a sudden Yankee Stadium's like what it was in the 90s when that team was young before. So everybody, when it comes to a youth in sports, everybody loves the young guys.
Yes.
And everybody gravitates towards those young guys. That's why everyone talks about all these young quarterbacks like Mahomes and Jackson and now Tua. So everybody now, the Dolphins now have the spotlight on them. And when you think about the players, they're going to tell you they don't listen to the media, they don't read the papers, they don't listen to the radio. That's bullshit. They do.
Yeah.
And if they're waking up in the morning before they go to work or practice or whatever you want to call it, they have first take on, right? They have first take. They have first things first on. They have get up on.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And all these years being a Dolphin, you turn it on, they're talking about the Steelers, they're talking about the Cowboys, then you're in your mind, they're like, oh, why don't they talk about us? They don't care about us. All of a sudden, you're not doing your job to the best of your ability. You turn on First Take if you're a Dolphins player and you see Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman talking about you and your team, all of a sudden, subconsciously, you're going to push a little harder and push a little more. They're going to get, if the NFL is smart, they're going to flex them to a Sunday night game later in the year. That's going to push them even more. Those are those motivating factors. When they know, when athletes know that people are watching them, they get that much better. And I think that's what you're seeing with the Dolphins the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you had Dan Orlovsky literally apologize to the fan base because he was saying, don't start Tua. He's not ready. And then obviously after his awesome performance, he literally was like, I'm sorry. I don't know what he's talking about. Like so many people were like, Colin Cowherd kind of same thing. He was like, like, you think he was a big Tua fan to start. He kind of backtracked and was like, he's too small. Like he doesn't have any shiftiness. And then you saw him escape twice that in two crazy kind of extend the play situations. And it was just awesome to see. But yeah, it really is awesome to see. And I mean, obviously you've seen it too, just how many times players are like, oh, like they're disrespecting us. Like they don't respect us. But then it never really works out because they were getting disrespected for a reason. I think you're seeing like a legit organic reason of a team that, not that they're necessarily getting disrespected, but they're not getting any national love. Now you're seeing them really fight for that national love, and it's real energy. They're not faking it. It's all real. And that, like you said, that would be awesome to see them get flexed to a primetime game like later in the season. Like
I'm not sure when the flexes happen. I think there's a week where the NFL is now allowed to flex, but looking right now, week 14 at home against Kansas City, that might be the one that gets flexed. I know there's a rule with how many teams are allowed on Sunday night, so the Chiefs might be at that point. But week 17 against the Bills, if that's that game that can decide who wins that division, NBC is going to get that.
Yeah, no,
so this is the first time in a decade that the Dolphins are getting even the idea of getting flexed to a national televised game. And you can't tell me, you can't tell anyone that that's not a big deal, because it is.
No, I mean, again, I used to literally just I would be so mad when they would get primetime games because obviously all the eyes are on them, and they would never perform. I mean, I can't tell you. I remember one year, I think it was like 2016. They lost by like 50 points and then 40 points in a Sunday night game, and then the next week Monday night game. I'm like, you can't put this team.
I
In prime
remember
time.
Odell went off with them as a Giant. Odell went crazy against the Dolphins on a Monday night game.
Yes. I remember that too. Yeah, that was again very good. That was a closer game, but like you had Jay Cutler. Like there was nothing organic and there was nothing real about it. And I think you're seeing now that they actually like are relevant, and not just because of Tua, because obviously that gives them the relevance, but just because they're actually somewhat good. Like it feels weird. Like that whole game, I'm like, is this this was a big boy win? I think I texted you that. Like this was an absolute big boy win where you didn't just spank the Jaguars. You didn't. Oh, maybe it was a fluke game against the Niners, and then we beat the Rams pretty bad too. And it was like, well, maybe they were just off. Like this was a real big boy win against one of the best offenses in football.
And that's so important to get those now. Because
agreed, yeah.
Why wait? Because that's what the Dolphins were essentially doing with Fitzpatrick. They were waiting to get those big boy wins down the road. Now they're speeding up that rebuild process. By the time we get to January, if they get a couple more, let's see, I'm looking at their schedule now. If they get another big boy win against the Chargers,
the next 4 games are quote unquote easy.
Yeah, let's say they get the Chargers would be a solid win. I think the Chargers and Dolphins are comparable. Yeah. But I can call that a big boy win. Too much to ask for the Chiefs, in my opinion.
No, yeah, that's David and Goliath. Yeah, Mahomes versus Tua.
But if they can at least fight in that game and keep it close, and then they can make that Week 17 game like meaningful, I think they can go back in Week 17 if it's the fourth quarter and they're down like they were against the Cardinals. They can go back to what they experienced with the Cardinals and use that in the Buffalo Bills game. And now it's all of a sudden not new to them. That's why this is so important, because all these experiences they're having now, even if they settle for the 7th and get bounced in the wild card round, or maybe not even make the playoffs, at least they're getting this experience of winning these important games now instead of next year, and then next year doesn't work out. Now, at this point, these big boy wins happen, and maybe they get the Bills in Week 17, and they win the division, and they get a home playoff game. All of a sudden, you're set up for the next decade. Because this core experienced what they needed to experience.
Yeah, I mean, and just like I went over, and basically the whole team, for the most part, is all kind of coming back. Like there really isn't any big key players or positions that you're losing. So even more so, hey, whether you succeed or fail as far as making the playoffs or not making the playoffs this year, your whole team's going to return and they're going to get older. And obviously you hope that they're going to get wiser and they're going to learn from it. So I think you're really seeing that you have a great core of just super young kids, because again, they are still kids, like we keep saying. And then you're going to see them blossom along with Flores blossoming as a coach, because obviously this is only his 2nd year as a head coach. So it's cool to see him grow as a coach, and then all his coordinators do kind of the same thing, and then come along with the players. Like you really see that player-coach relationship, opposed to just say more of a Belichick relationship where it's more out of fear, which again, that's fine. It works for him. But you're seeing, I would say, almost like a new age in coaching where you really see that he cares about the players.
Now, let's do this. We played sports our whole life, and the saying is you never look past the game that's right in front of you. Yes. But we're not playing these games. We're doing a podcast, so we're allowed to do it. So I'm going to ask you to move into the schedule. We've done this a couple times already. The next 4 games before you get to that Kansas City game are winnable football games. You got the Chargers, and then it gets easier as it goes down. The Broncos, who aren't that good, it seems.
And hurt.
The Jets, who haven't won a game yet. And then the Bengals, who are still learning, kind of like on the Dolphins, but the Dolphins seem to be ahead of them. If they can get 3 of those games, and if you're going to be selfish, maybe even 4, all of them, then all of a sudden you're 8-4, 9-3 going into that Kansas City Chiefs game, and all of a sudden that's a big, big game.
And you go into firstly, so those 4 games, there's, with what you've shown this last 4 wins, you should win those games. Like they're already favorites in the Chargers game. They're favorites right now. It says in the Broncos game, they're going to be favorites against the Jets, and they're going to be favorites against the Bengals. So your favorites in those games, betting wise, you should win those games. So if they,
I think
again, you have
I'll
to go
take
at least
one
3-1.
off. I think because Tua is still only 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
Essentially, I think you would be fine with 3.
Yes. Yeah.
Next year, all 4.
Yeah,
I think
that's
three
fair.
of these four would be
Mhm.
big.
Yeah, I think less than 3 is going to be like, all right, what the hell happened? Like, you better hope
Yeah.
that either Herbert or Burrow put on like a 5 touchdown performance, and even then you're like, what the hell happened to defense? So let's just say, yeah, they go 3 there, so that puts them at uh 8. So that put them at 8-4, like you said. And realistically, with the 7 playoff teams, you have Chiefs, Patriots, Raiders, and Raiders are a team you're competing with for the playoffs.
And
That
then
game right
they play
there,
them later on too.
exactly. So that game against the Raiders might be the game that decides if they can get in with at least a wild card spot. I still think the Bills are going to run away with the division a little bit. Again, I mean, they have a couple tough games coming up, but obviously anytime you play the Patriots, they're still kind of that like, all right, well, even though they're not very good, they still can kind of squeeze away a win. But I think that week 16 might determine if they get into the playoffs a little bit, because I'm not a believer in the Browns at all. Same thing with the Colts. I don't really believe in them too much, but I think the Raiders are a strong enough team where they'll be neck and neck with us. And if you can get the tiebreaker ahead of them, that sets you up pretty strongly.
The Bills have the Cardinals next week on the road. So they're going to have to go cross country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's tough because not only are they going cross country in the time zone and everything, but the Cardinals could be motivated to not lose that game because they just lost to the Dolphins. And I don't think Kyler is going to be, too keen on losing back-to-back games. Then they have the bye. So that's going to give the Dolphins that half a game that they're missing right now. And then their schedule is very similar to the Dolphins with one big caveat. They have the Chargers, who the Dolphins play. They have the Niners, who are struggling, to say the least.
Yeah.
Then they have Pittsburgh. Now, that's what the Dolphins have a little bit of a game at hand because they don't need to play Pittsburgh. They did that already.
Thank God.
Right?
No,
and
we
Pittsburgh,
don't
obviously, even on their worst day, they don't lose.
Yeah.
We saw it against the Cowboys. They didn't play well against the Cowboys at all. They still won the game.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even play Pittsburgh.
So that bye and the Pittsburgh game gives Dolphins a game and a half kind of advantage just towards the end of the year, where that week 17 game could be, for the division. So if you're a Dolphins fan, you deserve this. You deserve to dream this big because you haven't been able to for 20 years, your entire lifetime, basically. So you deserve it. You should do it.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way. I wouldn't say we're in the driver's seat, but we're chilling in the back seat right now.
Yeah.
We're in the car. We're moving forward, but we're not necessarily in the driver's seat. But like you said, you kind of add up those games and say the Bills drop one to a worser team. It's like, who knows? But these next 4 games are huge. You can't come off the gas pedal right now. You got to keep pounding forward. You got to at least get 3. That'll set you up where if you win either 1 or 2 of the next 4, which are 4 very tough games, that again you'll see if they are contenders or pretenders by kind of how these next 4 games go. I think because, like you said, the teams aren't as good, so you should be beating them.
And shifting the attention from the AFC East race from the Dolphins to the Bills, they had a huge win against Seattle. Like, if they don't win that game, and a lot of people, all people expected the Seahawks to win that game. If that goes the other way, all of a sudden the Dolphins are in tremendous shape to win the division. But, Josh Allen absolutely lit it up against Seattle, and that's not an easy thing to do. We went back and forth about Josh Allen throughout the series of this podcast this season. That was a very impressive game by him.
Yeah, I mean, again, you looked at their last 2 weeks. They put up 24, and they just beat the Patriots by 3. Then they only put up 18 against the Jets, and that's where me and you both were like, oh, like they're like what happened? Like this team isn't real, whatever. And then obviously you throw up 44 against the Seahawks. I know the defense isn't that good, but 44 points is a ton. And even their defense, they had like 4, or they had like made Russell Wilson like turn over 4 times. Like a lot of those points, a lot of those points of the 34 were kind of garbage time. Like like they're playing prevent defense. It doesn't really matter too much. I thought that game was a statement game. I think for the Bills throughout the whole NFL, saying, "Hey, we're here and we're ready to go right now."
Josh Allen went 31 of 38, 415 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. It would be very difficult to ask your quarterback to do better than that against the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, it's not the 100%. Legion of Boom anymore, but it's still, a Super Bowl contending team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the Seahawks were our picks to go to the Super Bowl. And obviously that may have changed a little bit throughout the weeks, but again, they're still a 6-2 football team.
Let's move to the other two teams in the AFC East, that Monday night game between the Patriots and the Jets. Going into this game, I kind of had a feeling if this is a game the Jets could win. Like if the Jets were going to win a game, this would be it. And for a long time, they had that. The Flacco played well in the first half. Cam Newton and the Patriots didn't. But eventually, the Patriots prevailed. Bill Belichick, under no circumstances, whether it be with Tom Brady and trying to win a Super Bowl or this team that he has now, he'll never lose. He'll never want to lose to the Jets.
Yeah.
A lot of people were kind of saying, "Oh, if Bill loses to the Jets, he's actually winning. It's actually doing him. They're actually doing himself a favor by getting Lawrence out of the Jets." But Newton drives down the field to get the game-winning field goal. Nick Folk, former Jet, beats his old team. Now we get a week closer to the Jets clinching that first overall pick in the draft. We were talking in our group chat with Garrett. Garrett's like, I don't know where the win's coming. So if they get that number one pick, all of a sudden it's becoming more and more realistic that Lawrence is going to be there for the Jets. And we ran a poll, or you ran a poll on Instagram a few weeks ago saying whether you have Darnold or Lawrence, and it was 30% keep Darnold to figure it out with him. You got to think now with Darnold not only not playing well, but also not being as healthy as you want your guy to be. You got to think that number would go up.
Yeah, again, and I'm projecting a 70% yes. You're drafting Lawrence. Like again, it's always funny to see how the season plays out and just see how fan bases kind of flip flop a lot. But it just this one specifically, everybody was Jets fans specifically. A lot of them were ride or die with Darnold. He's still good. We got to get him a line. We got to get him weapons. We got to do this. We got to do that. And now it's like, all right, maybe we'll take Trevor Lawrence. And so again, that's just part of football. Like, and again, we'll get into it a little bit with Kyler and then kind of with the Giants. But as far as the Jets go with their schedule again, and even the Patriots game, I thought, again, I said the same thing. I was like, they're going to win today. Like they're 100% going to win. And I think they would have won if Flacco didn't throw that bomb interception. Like you had 5 minutes left. You're up a touchdown, and you friggin' throw a pick on like the first play. Like that was so stupid. And that was a very like we're tanking-esque kind of play. Like if you're a Jets fan who wants to go 0-16, that was your absolute miracle play right there. So that one, as a Dolphin fan, because obviously I don't want Trevor Lawrence to go to the Jets, I was like, shit. They had it in the bag and they absolutely gave it away.
Like for a quick second, Lawrence was on his way to Jacksonville. For like a quick second.
Because I don't think Jacksonville's winning much at all, if anything. No. So I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, you look at the Jets' schedule. They got Chargers. That one maybe they could win. Then you got
on the road.
It is. It's at Los Angeles.
Oh, then they're not winning.
Yeah, so that's whatever. And then you have obviously Dolphins. We're assuming Dolphins to win. Raiders. You're gonna assume Raiders. Then Seahawks, Rams, Browns, Patriots. I mean, again, they do get the Patriots again, but it's Patriots at Foxborough. I think.
But it might not matter at that point.
That Browns one might be interesting. I think that one could be.
Are they home against the Browns?
They are home against the Browns.
Oh, there you go.
That's going to be an interesting one. But I think, imagine that the Jets win the last 2 games of the season and miss out on Lawrence. That would be Jets. That would be the goddamn Jets right there. That would be so typical Jets, and they would just be in disarray.
And something I saw watching the pregame for the Jets-Patriots game, they put a graphic up about cap space going into this offseason. The Jets and Patriots both have at least $85 million in cap space. I think the Jets are at 100.
Yeah.
So both those teams, I think that's why this season's so important to both the Bills and Dolphins. Both those teams could be dramatically improved by next September, assuming one of them get a quarterback. Let's say the Jets get Lawrence and the Patriots get whoever, right? Yeah, anyone could be better than a washed-up Cam Newton at this point. And then in free agency, Bill Belichick's going to have pull. He's going to get some guys. People want to play for him still. Absolutely. And you got to assume that the Jets are going to bring in some A-list guy, hopefully, and the people are going to want to play for him. It's not this black hole for the Jets, and certainly not the Patriots, but specifically, it's not the black hole for the Jets that this is going to be like a another 10-year thing that they're going to be terrible. If they make the right moves, they can be right back in 1 or 2 years. The issue is, do you trust Douglas, and do you trust whatever head coach they get, and do you trust Chris Johnson, the owner, to make those right decisions? Because it's not out of the realm of possibility if everything breaks right in terms of Lawrence and then the guys they bring in around him with their $100 million in cap space, that this team could be good in a relatively near future.
I mean, you look at the Dolphins in their year after their bad season. Now they're doing pretty well. The Niners, they had 2 wins, and the next year they're going to the Super Bowl or whatever it was. And then you look at the Rams, kind of same thing. Like, it only really took them say 1 to 2 to 3 years. But I think the biggest thing is going to be the head coach. And again, I mean, if they keep Gase, that would be absurd. Horrible. I think, because not even the fact that I just don't think he's a good coach at all, but no free agents are going to come to you. I think Gase might be the only coach in the NFL where you're going to be like, listen, I don't want that amount of money. And again, if they were smart, I think they would go after the Chiefs offensive coordinator. That would be, I think, a huge pull for them. And I think that would be an awesome opportunity for their what's his name, like Ben, the Chiefs.
I don't have it in front of me.
I'll pull it up real quick. But regardless, I mean, you give this, looks like, again, not to pull the Jets, but this offensive guru in a sense with the Chiefs, you give him $100 million cap space. You give him a defense that isn't terrible. Obviously, they need to invest in a little bit more. You give him a ton of draft picks. They got like 2 first-round picks, and then you give him the quarterback he wants. Like that, as a head coach coming in, a new head coach especially, that's awesome. And he's obviously got a little bit of job security being a first-year head coach, and also just coming in the year after their little teardown. So I think if they got him, that would be pretty sweet, and that would maybe intrigue guys to come to New York. But if it's Gase, there's no shot.
Now, you said this to me in a text after the Jets game, and it was a little bit of a kind of like a flirty kind of thing. Dabo Swinney, if Lawrence goes to the Jets, we all know Swinney loves Trevor Lawrence. Like, it's his baby, basically.
Yeah.
Is that actually a real possibility, or is that kind of just like a cute little, like, maybe this could happen kind of thing?
Yeah. So to give credit to that one, Joey actually said that. Okay. And texted me that, and then it really made me think about like why not? Like, I obviously, all right, the question is, can he coach in the NFL? Obviously, that's every new coach, you're wondering, can he be a good head coach?
You're going to ask anyway. If you bring in the best coordinator in the game, they're going to ask the same question.
That's what I mean. So I think you would see a very old Nick Saban move where he came from LSU and he came to the Dolphins. Again, imagine that. Like, you give Dabo Swinney, who is one of the best head coaches in college football of all time. Can't really debate that, and see what he's done with Clemson. And you give him Trevor Lawrence. Like, you just say, hey, here's your guy. You bring in the same system. You do whatever you want to do. Like, you're like, that's, again, obviously that's never happened before, but like, that would make his life a lot easier. And I think definitely would make Trevor Lawrence's a lot easier too, because it's the same thing. They're just playing another year. And I think that would be awesome to see. That would be something cool for a New York Jets fan to see.
And something that is kind of maybe a little bit of a benefit to the Jets is that right now, as we speak, Dabo Swinney's getting a taste of what life is like without Trevor Lawrence, because he's obviously not playing because of COVID. Now, they lost the Notre Dame in an absolute classic. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was a great game.
But he still lost. Did they lose the game before?
No, they beat Boston College, but they kind of came back a little bit. That was a scary game.
That's Boston College,
Yeah.
So, moral of the story, Dabo's now realizing without Trevor Lawrence, like, the Clemson's not going to be the powerhouse that they've been for the last 2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
So now that can put in his head, hey, maybe this would be the perfect moment for me to bounce to the NFL and give that a try.
Yeah, you got to assume that the Jets would pay him a ton of money. Obviously, he's getting a lot now in Clemson, but you got to think about a team that is just starving for a good head coach, and they're obviously swimming in money a little bit too. I think you make that splash. That would be awesome, I think, for him, for the NFL, and then for the Jets, because like you said, there's what incentive is there to go play for the New York Jets? Like the New York Jets are not a prestigious franchise. The last time they won a Super Bowl was prior to a person landing on the moon.
Well, think about it this way: their whole franchise that is 60 years old is predicated on one name, One player, the Joe Namath. Other than that, who's the Jets legend? Who's the other Jets legend? Every other franchise can name at least 3 or 4. Teams we root for in New York can name 6, 7, 8, depending on which team you're thinking about.
Bart Scott, Darrell Revis for. I bet you
the
Rex
Jets
Ryan.
have one guy that their entire history is predicated about.
Mm-hmm.
They need a seismic change in culture, in leadership, and in talent. And I think Sweeney and Lawrence do both of those. All of those.
I despise the Jets, but I would respect the hell, and you would be excited for that move. Again, I don't really know who wouldn't be excited. So basically, my question that will go out on Instagram tomorrow is going to be, if you're the Jets, would you want Dabo Sweeney to be your next head coach? And obviously pair him with his golden child, Trevor Lawrence.
You give him whatever he wants.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, again, because who else are you going to get? And obviously the Chiefs offensive coordinator has got Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy. Obviously, he's really good with the Chiefs, and he's got but that offense is crazy. So you could kind of see where it's like, all right, like obviously he's got Patrick Mahomes, it's a little easier to work with. So I think you take a chance on Dabo Sweeney, and just take a chance, because when you sign Adam Gase to be your head coach, that was such a lateral. Obviously that was an even worse move. Like, take a chance on Dabo Sweeney. If it doesn't work out, oh well. It is.
The other thing probably wasn't going to work out anyway.
Exactly. So at least just take a chance.
Yeah. So moving on to the other New York team, Giants. They beat Washington. What's new? They only beat Washington. Daniel Jones is 5-17 in his NFL career. If you take out Washington games, he's 1-17 in the NFL. And if the one was that Tampa game, which was his first start ever. So other than Washington, he's 0 for his last 17. That's my stat of the day for you.
That I did not know that. That's pretty interesting there. I mean, again, obviously we're only a year and a half in, but you got to beat division games. Like you have to, and you can't sweep Washington.
Some games aren't his fault. Evan Ingram catches a pass, he beats Philly.
Mm-hmm.
The defense kind of collapsed against the Cowboys, but a loss is a loss is a loss.
Yeah.
And you could say those two Redskins Washington football team wins that he had this year.
Mm-hmm.
One was because Ron Rivera went for 2 absurdly, and he blew the game for his team when they came back and should have tied the game and put it into overtime. So that could have been a loss. And it took the Giants 5 turnovers on Sunday to only win by 3.
With the backup quarterback.
With the backup quarterback. Yeah. Haskins didn't play.
They're all backups.
What's his face broke his ankle or whatever.
Kyle Allen
broke his, and then Alex Smith threw just 2 inexcusable interceptions at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen. Then the Washington wins the game, and we're back into this. Is Daniel Jones the answer? Now the Giants eke out that win, and they play the Eagles on Sunday, and all of a sudden we have this conversation that we have every single episode. Even though the Giants lose every week, we're still asking the question: can they actually make a run in the division? I can't. I give up with the Giants. No, they're not good for my mental state.
No, I feel you there, and it's so crazy, because it's like, imagine you had the team that you had, say, 3 years ago with Eli, an aging Eli Manning, and a team that had like 8 wins or whatever they may have had. That team right now is a powerhouse in the NFC East, as crazy as it sounds. So I think this year, if everything kind of unfolds how we think it's going to be, and the Eagles say take the division and the Giants fall at that 3rd or 4th spot, like, what an absolute just disappointing season. Again, you could say that you could say, all right, well, it's only year 2 of Daniel Jones and year 1 of Joe Judge. But here's the thing, that's
fine to have. Oh, let's give him 3 years. But it's a problem when year 1 was better than year 2. That's not a good, decline.
No, I agree, and even more so, it's like, what a missed opportunity. Like you had a chance to maybe see Daniel Jones in a playoff game in a real and earn his stripes a little bit, and you're not going to get that. I mean, again, I don't really see the Giants winning the division. I think they can statistically.
Well, mathematically, they could. If they win the Eagles game, all of a sudden you're like a game out.
Yeah, so they obviously can, but and then this is what I want to kind of get into with the Kyler situation is, obviously, again, we've gone over it and everyone knows it, that the Cardinals, after 1 year of Josh Rosen, said, we're done with him. We're bringing in Kyler Murray with that first pick. So it begs the question, not even the Giants, but basically any team. Like, if you aren't necessarily in love with what you have, is 1 year enough, basically.
Yeah.
And
And the thing you got to think about from a Giants standpoint, if they get a new GM, he doesn't owe Daniel Jones anything. He didn't pick him. Dave Gettleman did.
He doesn't owe Joe Judge anything.
Yeah.
As
So if
crazy
they
as
get
that
a new
sounds.
GM, that's why it was stupid to not fire Gettleman with Shermer, because now you
Agreed.
fall into like what the Jets did with Rex Ryan. They brought in John Igzik. He had to keep Rex Ryan and then set them back to this day.
Yeah.
If they bring in a new GM, let's say that, you know, Joe Judge is fine, because I truly like what Joe Judge does. He holds his guys accountable. He seems to be like this general, like military general kind of guy, disciplinarian type of guy. I think that's what the Giants need, because Shermer was a pushover. Everybody knows that. But, you know, a new GM comes in, he doesn't owe Daniel Jones anything. And if Justin Fields is sitting there at the Giants pick, you're going to think long and hard about whether he's better suited than Daniel Jones is to be successful. Because let's be honest, even though he didn't turn the ball over against Washington on Sunday, he's a turnover machine.
Yeah.
He has a million turnovers in his career. And when you go back all the way to college at Duke, he had a million turnovers there too. So at some point, you are who you are. And right now, Daniel Jones is a guy who, you know, is a lot more versatile than Eli Manning in terms of, you know, what he can do when he gets flustered outside of the pocket when he needs to move. But other than that, you know, his arm strength isn't the best, right?
Yeah.
His decision making isn't great, right? He falls down, the field tackles him. But you know, at some point you got to be like, even though he's your first round pick, you got to move on. Somebody told me this today or the other day about in a comp to Daniel Jones. I was like, oh, no way. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, Daniel Jones is better than this guy, but it's turning out to be the same kind of deal. And that's Jake Locker. Jake Locker, who was drafted by Tennessee, you know, from Washington, not a powerhouse college football school. Like Duke's not a college powerhouse in football. Yeah. And the Titans picked him with the first round. I think it was like 8th. Daniel Jones was 6th. And it just didn't work. You know, sometimes the first round pick just doesn't work. And I think the sooner you move on, the better. Yeah. I would give Daniel Jones till the end of the year, personally. But if a Fields or a Lawrence is there, you do it.
Yeah, again, it begs. So a couple questions to go into what you talked about is, obviously it looks like the Giants are no doubt going to have a top 5, maybe even top 3 pick. So you figure you give the Jets number 1 pick, they get Lawrence. So he's off the board. I truthfully think Justin Fields is going to win the Heisman. So even though earlier in the season, everyone was like, oh, I don't want Justin Fields, people are going to be in love with Justin Fields, and they're going to be salivating over him, similar to kind of the Burrow situation. So I think you're going to see a Fields on the board when they pick. If he's not there, I don't necessarily think I would go quarterback then, because rule of thumb is when you're drafting quarterback, you have to love him. If you don't love the quarterback, don't get him. Don't just force yourself into it. But you're going to run into a situation where they might be at a 2 or 3 and Fields is there, and it's like, all right, in our next, say, couple of years, are we ever going to get this draft pick again? So even say like the next year you go 6 and 10, you're sitting at like a 10th pick. You're obviously not going to get a 1 or 2 quarterback for the most part. And then maybe the next year you're at 7 and 9. And it's like, oh, well, you're winning more games, but it's like now you're in year 4, then you're in year 5, then maybe we're in the second contract of Daniel Jones. And it's like, shit, well, maybe if we just took that second quarterback off the board in a guy like Justin Fields, who looks really promising out of Ohio State, with that second, third overall pick, because you might not get another chance like that again.
Yeah. And go ahead.
You go. You go.
Well, something that's interesting, what you just said about, oh, we'll never be here again. That's exactly what we said when they had the Barkley pick. When they had the second overall pick, all Giants fans, and I said this, I was at the radio station in college at the time, we were all saying, the Giants are never going to be here again. You got to take the quarterback. And then they didn't take the quarterback, and then they were in that position again. Yeah. So do you learn from your mistakes as an organization? I mean, what they were saying back then was take Darnold. Obviously, as we speak right now, they're probably better off without Darnold and better with Barkley. Yeah. But, that's up to debate, because Barkley doesn't stay on the field. And other than his rookie year, hasn't been, that transcendent great running back that we expect. Yeah. But, Josh Allen was there too. What if they took Josh Allen? Josh Allen looks like a star. So if Justin Fields is there, do you learn from the mistake of 3 years ago and say, sorry, Daniel, we like you, but we like this guy better, and that's just the way
It's
the
like,
business is.
yeah, it's one of those situations. Yeah, we love you, but we're not in love with you. And then
Yeah.
just you really you look at like kind of like we said before about how quickly teams are kind of rebuilding and competing, that it's not this like 5 year long rebuild really anymore. You see, like if you get a good head coach, you pair him with a good quarterback, usually that's a decent recipe for success there, that you
Also,
can kind
nobody
of,
has time for that anymore.
well, and that's what I mean. And you shouldn't have to wait 5 years to compete for a playoff spot, especially if the Cardinals, like I said, if the Dolphins can manage to do it,
And
if
the
the
division's
Rams
so
did it.
bad.
And that's what I mean. Even more so, you have all these factors that saying they should be winning the division right now with kind of where they're at, or where they should be, put it that way. So it's one of those situations where, listen, like we're not where we should be right now. And even though it's only been 2 years of Daniel Jones, we're going to go into in a different direction. And again, it's one of those things where, I mean, I don't really know off the top of my head, but has it ever really kind of panned out? Again, outside of Ryan Tannehill, I think might be the only one where someone got traded a quarterback like too early per se, similar to like a Josh Rosen thing, and they went on to be great.
Well, Drew Brees is there.
But you even look at that with Phillip Rivers, like that Phillip Rivers still was a still good quarterback. Like he might be a Hall of Famer. So it's like it didn't necessarily not pan out. And I mean, again, when you really think about it, like has anyone moved on from a guy too early? And I can even say not even the Dolphins, because they gave Tannehill 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So like when you really think, like you imagine yourself, say 2 years from now, being like, shit, we shouldn't have drafted Justin Fields. We should have kept on to Daniel Jones. Like, is Daniel Jones going to make you rue the day that you guys traded him? Like,
I don't know.
I don't think so either.
Because where would he go? The Patriots?
I mean, you could say Patriots, you could say Steelers, Colts, and I don't know if I really don't
And
know
does
if
Daniel
that.
Jones even ever actually get a shot? Because, every team wants their own guy. They don't want these damaged goods. I think it's going to be really hard for Rosen to ever get another chance. Because people, they're going to say, we can get Rosen or Jones, or we can just get our own guy.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Rosen's on the practice squad right now.
Yeah.
So it's like once he's off that rookie deal, I don't know what he's going to be getting paid. But like you said, they might just say, hey, we're going to take a flyer on somebody in the 3rd or 4th round, and then maybe see if they're a kind of boom or bust kind of guy. But I mean, again, it's really interesting to see, and you don't want to just like bury Daniel Jones, but it's like it is what it is. You said you shouldn't have to wait 4 to 5 years to finally be competitive within your own division, especially being how weak it is now. So I think a lot of factors come into play when talking about their decision whether they want to move on from Daniel Jones. One being, obviously, is Fields or Lawrence going to be there when they're picking? 2, how does Daniel Jones and the whole team kind of progress through the season? And then obviously 3 being, all right, do they bring in a new GM? Because he ultimately is going to say, hey, I want a new quarterback.
I think the last 7 games will determine Jones's future with the Giants.
I would 100% agree.
Because if he keeps turning the ball over and they, just bottom, even if they don't win games, at least look good. Like there's been times that he's looked completely incompetent this year. Like other than like I watch every game. Like I can't remember a time when I was like, oh wow, Daniel Jones. The team's not good, but Daniel Jones is really showing me something here. I don't remember that moment this year. I remember it last year, but not this year.
And I asked you, I remember, and this was similar with the Fitzpatrick situation in Miami. I was like, I didn't want to take him out until he was losing you games. I feel like certain games you can make the argument that Daniel Jones was losing you games.
He lost the Buccaneer game.
He
lost. That was his fault.
Yeah. So if he has a couple more of those games where he's like single-handedly losing game, because I like their defense, the Giants. I really do.
Good defense. Blake Martinez has been good. Logan Ryan's been good.
Bradbury's been good.
Bradbury's fantastic.
Their pressure up the middle with Tomlinson and Lawrence and obviously Williams too. Like I think that's a very very good defense.
And it'll get better next year when McKinney's healthy.
Agreed. Yeah. So
and whoever they sign.
Almost you have a third of the phases in play.
They have a good enough defense. That's what they have.
Yes, I agree. And you have a good enough defense that's keeping you in games, And again, I agree. It doesn't really look like the offense and specifically Daniel Jones is really doing enough to kind of want to keep you interested.
Yeah,
That's
and
as
the thing
simple as
is, I
that.
was talking to Tyler before we went on this show because we just did the baseball
Mhm.
show. He said, "Oh, Daniel Jones doesn't have anyone to throw to." I disagree. Slayton's a guy you can throw to. Sterling Shepard's a guy you can throw to.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
their tight ends not well. Ingram you can throw to, but I don't
Ingram,
like
yeah,
Ingram.
yeah, but
But
he's still a
the
first
other
rounder.
Caden Smith, he's a guy you can
Mhm.
throw to. Like he's been pretty impressive. So the idea that Daniel Jones doesn't have weapons, in my opinion, is not true. He doesn't have that number one
Yeah,
receiver. He doesn't have Odell Beckham, but
but not a lot of
he
teams
doesn't
do.
have nobodies.
Yeah, I mean,
Like Sam
again,
Darnold has nobodies.
yeah, yeah, and then finally this year they kind of brought in some guys like Perryman and Mims is finally back. Darnold hasn't played with them yet. I want to see what he does with that. But yeah, I think again, when you really look at that excuse of like, oh, they've got nobody, you look
Mm.
at the Patriots like right now, like their wide receiving core, like there's nobody. Like you don't even have Edelman on the field anymore, and he was like the only guy they had that was actually somewhat of a good player. Like that's a very depleted kind of team. And then again, I mean, also, I mean, the Giants have Golden Tate too. Obviously, he's got his own
Yeah.
issues right now with them. But I would not by any means say that they have nobody to throw to. I mean, again,
Yeah.
I would, if I went down and looked at every receiving core in the league, I do not think they would be bottom five,
Yeah.
realistically speaking.
They have some names.
That's what I
Do you
mean.
think it's unfair that Daniel Jones is getting critiqued this year without Barkley? Do you think that makes that much of a difference?
No, no, because personally, I never really liked the way they used Barkley anyway. I feel like he's a guy who you need to get into the screen game and then do outside runs with,
Yes.
and they would just ram him up the middle. And that's not saying he's not strong, but maybe their offensive line isn't working like that. So they never used him the right way anyway. And you're seeing Gallman had a lot of success the last week, so it's going to be interesting to see. All right, how does the rest of the Giants kind of run game? How does that progress throughout the years too, or throughout this year too? And I really don't think that like Saquon is really changing his success. I mean, a little bit. I will say a little bit because obviously Saquon is going to be better than a Gallman. He's going to help the play action game and stuff like that. So a little bit, but enough to say, oh, we need to see another year of what he does with Saquon. I wouldn't go that far.
Because
But
if you do that, then you get closer to the rookie contract of Saquon expiring.
Yeah.
So it's probably good to see what Jones does without Barkley because, you can very well not have Barkley in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we both have alluded to that could be a very real reality. So again, I would not use that as a reason to justify keeping Daniel Jones or keeping you from, say, drafting a Justin Fields or a Trevor Lawrence. Like that to me would be a pretty kind of lame excuse because now you're relying on your franchise quarterback to his whole career basically is with the Giants is relying on Saquon and his surgically repaired knee.
Let's move on. Let's tackle a couple more teams before we go. Let's start with the Buccaneers, who got destroyed on Sunday Night Football. Is this one of those games, or is this cause for concern for Tampa?
I think it's cause for concern because you've seen this a couple times, and again, I think it comes down to Bruce Arians because we've seen the shades of Tom Brady being good. Their offense on paper is extremely good, but I remember I think Dan Orlovsky alluded to it a little bit, saying how this is just unacceptable, and he said like this happens too many times throughout the year where they just show up and get blown out. Like, how do you murder the Packers, like destroy the Packers, and then you put up that performance against the Saints? Like that to me makes absolutely
I don't
no
think
sense.
Tom Brady's ever lost like that in his career.
No, I mean,
it would take me a while to find that game.
the whole kind of vibe of the game was just like, what the hell is going on? And obviously Brady's not going to throw anyone under the bus because he didn't play well either by any means. But again, that looks to me like they just weren't prepared. They just simply were not prepared.
And you think they would be because they lost to the Saints on week 1. And they kind of needed that game in terms of the tiebreakers. And the Saints are the one
100%.
team that's going to challenge them in that division. And they completely laid an egg on national television.
That you couldn't have put up a worse performance than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Absolutely could not. I think that's going to be the worst performance from a playoff and allegedly Super Bowl contending team that we're going to see so far this year. I definitely calls for concern.
And we could flip the coin and give the Saints credit.
Agreed.
I don't think we expected this to happen on Sunday.
No.
we've been
defense
talking
stepped up.
about, hey, is Breeze done? He's not throwing the ball down the field. His numbers aren't the same. Breeze 26-32, 222 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. A classic Breeze performance. Maybe not in terms of yardage. Normally he's in like the 300s. But for what he is now, that's probably the best Drew Brees can do. And that's very good.
I think you just tip of the cap to Sean Payton for understanding, hey, we don't have this big live arm anymore, so let's kind of cater the offense to him. And that's just a testament to what a good coach is. As much as you want to say, oh, well, we need a guy to fit my scheme, you got to conform to what you got a little bit. You can't be stubborn. You got to conform, and he did. And you're seeing him still be successful in his old age and potentially last year playing football.
Let's play this game. Has our expectations for both teams changed because of this game? Maybe the Saints jump into that Super Bowl contention conversation, and maybe the Buccaneers leave it? Or do you think it's just one game?
I would say, yeah. I would definitely say that, yeah. I mean, I definitely am not as high on the Buccaneers as I was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And I think definitely the Saints, you're seeing that defense really step up to what you assumed they were going to be earlier in the year. So we get, right off the bat, if I had to put money on, do I think the Buccaneers are going to even have a playoff win? I would say no. I really would. That just was such a piss poor performance from that whole team.
And when you look at the NFC, it's not a runaway.
No.
Like, there's not really that elite team in the NFC. You got the Packers, who have looked bad at times this year in some of their games where they've laid an egg. The Saints have done the same, and now the Buccaneers have, and now the game over your shoulder, the Seahawks have a bad loss. So the good old phrase, any given Sunday, any team other than the NFC East team that comes into the playoffs, any of those teams could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. There's no clear-cut favorite because all these teams are very vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, you're not seeing any sort of fraction of a level of dominance that you're seeing in the AFC with the Chiefs and with the Steelers. And to me, you look at, you got 6-2 Saints, 6-3 Buccaneers, 6-2 Seahawks, who have a disgustingly bad defense. You have the 5-3 Cardinals, who have, again, the number one offense in football, but again, another team that their defense isn't really there. Like, you have a ton of uncompleted teams, which is, it's so weird. And that's, again, another reason why the Giants got to be like, hey, we got to figure this out, because the NFC is not looking too hot right now. We got to step it up. And again, you look at Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to be there for too much longer. You got Drew Brees, he might not even be there next year. Tom Brady, he's not going to be there for in a couple of years. So looking at the landscape as from a quarterback perspective, I mean, you're not going to see much continuity from who the quarterbacks are now to who are going to be the quarterbacks in 3 years.
Yeah, and if you're a team that's on like the fringe, like the Giants or the Bears, or the Vikings, the Lions, and then you got the Falcons and the Panthers, all these teams that are down, even the 49ers and the Rams, like, you're not giving up for the next few years to rebuild. You're just not, because none of these teams are any good. And as you said, the two teams on top of the South, the Saints and the Buccaneers, have quarterbacks in their 40s, right?
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is in 37 years old now?
Yeah, he's
in that area.
Still awesome, but he's obviously getting up there.
What NFC East team has, the guy for the next decade, like we see in the AFC?
I mean,
Seattle?
Let's go through it, honestly. So we'll start
Kyler, probably the only one.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through. So Philly got Wentz. Do you think, put it this way. I know
Eagles fans, they're done.
So I'll do it like this. You tell me yes or no. I'll go down through each team, and whether you think the quarterback that is there right now, and I'll just say whatever, is going to be the same quarterback in 4 years.
Okay.
So Philly with Wentz.
No.
Washington with any of the three quarterbacks they have. Dallas with Dak.
Yes.
Giants with Dan Jones.
No.
Green Bay with Rodgers. 4 years now. Think about it.
How old is he now?
He's like 35, 36, maybe 34.
I mean, they didn't draft Love to sit for 5 years, so I'm going to say no.
Fair. And then Chicago with Foles or Trubisky.
No.
Minnesota with Kirk Cousins.
No.
Detroit with Stafford.
No, I think that's been long overdue, to be honest with you.
Yeah, agree. Obviously, Drew Brees with the Saints.
No.
Tom Brady with the Bucs.
No.
Matt Ryan with the Falcons.
No.
Teddy Bridgewater with Carolina.
No. Maybe. That's a maybe. Maybe. Who knows?
Yes. Russell Wilson with Seattle.
Probably.
Yeah, obviously that's a yes.
He'll be closer to the end, but he'll still be good.
Yeah, Arizona with Kyler.
Yes.
And Goff with the Rams is even a questionable one.
Maybe.
Yeah, and
slight
then,
yes. I'll give a slight yes.
That's fair. And then Jimmy G with San Fran.
We don't know. Who knows what?
I would say no. So I mean, realistically, we just went through 16 teams, the whole NFC conference, and there was maybe 200% yeses in Seattle with Russ, and then Arizona with Kyler. As far as are they going to be the starting quarterbacks this year, or 3 with Dak in Dallas?
Yes.
That to me is
the
alarming.
NFC. It's much better percentage.
Yeah,
the AFC.
Yeah, so I mean, let's play that game now. So same thing. Let's go through the AFC. So we got Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Yes.
Tua with Miami.
Yes.
Cam Newton with the Patriots.
No.
Sam Darnold with the Jets.
No.
Big Ben with the Steelers.
No, but he's still very good now. That's the caveat.
Yeah, that's fair. Lamar Jackson with the Ravens.
Yes.
Baker with Cleveland.
I'll say yes.
Agreed. Joe Burrow with the Bengals.
Yes.
Tannehill with the Titans.
How old's Tannehill?
He's like 32, and he just signed a 4-year deal.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean they made the AFC Championship last year. They're 6-2 now. So yeah.
Yeah. Phillip Rivers with Indy.
Yes. No,
really?
I'm sorry. No, I was looking at Houston when you said that.
So obviously, Deshaun Watson in Houston.
Yes.
Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville.
No.
Mahomes in KC. Don't need to
obviously
ask. Yes. Derek Carr with the Raiders is an interesting one.
Maybe. If they make the playoffs this year, then it's looking good.
Agreed.
He's finally healthy. I think that's important.
Yeah. Drew Lock with the Broncos.
No.
And then Herbert with the Chargers.
Yes.
So I mean that had to be at least what, double, triple?
That had to be half the league.
Yeah.
Half the conference.
Agreed. I mean, when
better than 2.
Yes, like when you really think about that, like people really need to look at the NFC landscape, and we talked about this in a previous episode, saying how you're going to have a lot of changing of the guard quarterbacks, and a lot of them are coming in the NFC. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And that's why, again, if you're a fan of any team who's not really in that playoff hunt right now, you need to figure it out real quick, because you're going to see a lot of other teams, like I think like the Saints, I think like Tampa Bay in a couple years, that are going to be in more of a rebuild mode because they don't have a quarterback. Mm-hmm. It's going to be really interesting to see. That was honestly very cool to see, like really like where everyone.
Like when you say it out loud, you realize just how like dire situations that some NFC teams have. Just
the whole NFC. You really look, you're like, damn, like is this team really going to figure it out? I mean, just like you see so many incomplete teams. It really is. It's weird. I don't know.
Let's finish the show with Pittsburgh. Beat Dallas. Didn't play their best game, but they still won anyway. They're 8-0. We talk about the Chiefs. Like it's just a done deal. They're going to the Super Bowl. Is it though? Can this Steelers team? I mean, they could. I mean, obviously they can. Anyone can beat anyone on any given Sunday. But is it time to give the Steelers that favorite ranking in the AFC over Kansas City?
Let's think. Let's talk through this a little bit. So you looked at the Super Bowl last year, Niners versus Chiefs. It was a classic battle of offense versus defense. Mm-hmm. I would say this is the same, Chiefs offense versus Steelers defense, but the Steelers have a lot better of an offense than the Niners did. So I would probably give the edge to the Steelers a little bit, because that defense is tenacious, absolutely tenacious, and Big Ben is not rolling over right now.
Yeah,
he is.
I mean, I honestly thought he was done going into the year.
Yeah, no, those wide receivers, those young wide receivers are giving him some life. And James Conner, same thing, and that old line is just, and the defense is going to keep him in games. I have all the faith in the world that offense can beat up a Chiefs defense, because the Chiefs defense they're pretty good, nothing too crazy.
And then what the question will be: can Mahomes beat the Pittsburgh defense? He can.
Of course,
I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. He might be the best quarterback we'll ever see by the time it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. But
but on that one day in December,
defense
January,
wins championships. That's the classic saying.
Yeah, because realistically, if they met in the AFC Championship, it's like you're not going to see a collapse like you did with the Falcons and the Patriots. You're not going to see it like we did with the Niners against the Chiefs, and then even the Texans
Titans, yeah.
against the Chiefs, Titans against the Chiefs, and the Texans against the Chiefs. You're not going to see those collapses with the Steelers defense. You're just not. You're absolutely not. So again, it's obviously if you just kind of take if you take the last year out of it and their success last year with the Chiefs, and you really just look at this year, that Steelers defense is so good. And again, it's just to me, I would give the edge right now to the Steelers. That could change tomorrow, but that's where I'm at.
One of the knocks, maybe the only knock on the Chiefs that we can find when we really have to look for it, is that they sometimes don't start well.
Yeah,
we saw it in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it in games this year. They played the Chargers. It took them a while. Even the Jets game, it kind of took a little bit for them to get going.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that luxury against the Steelers defense. Because if you get behind, as you said, by 10-0 in the first, that's a very, very tall hill to climb. Even if, in another game against another team, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to look at some of their games right now, like some of their close ones. Like you won by 3 against the Chiefs, and the Chargers probably should have pulled that one out. You lost to the Raiders, obviously. You beat the Bills by 9, destroyed the Broncos, destroyed the Jets, obviously. Then you only won by 2 against the Panthers, and trying to see the Chiefs Buccaneers is going to be, I think, is going to be a fun game to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll be. No, that is in 2 weeks. So they got Chiefs
so it gives
Raiders.
The Buccaneers to regroup.
Yeah, I mean, you look at kind of the back end. They got Chiefs play the Saints as well. That'll be a good game too. To see them against that NFC there. But yeah,
so the way that the schedule just works out with the teams that the Chiefs have to play, that home field advantage might go to Pittsburgh, and that could be very important.
No, yeah, again, we
you don't
saw
want
with,
to play
with
there.
the Patriots. Yeah, no, 100%. And obviously it comes into play whether people believe it or not. Like certain stadiums have fans and certain teams don't, so that could be a big factor as well as far as home field advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be such a great AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it would just be so just gritty.
That would probably be the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but the way it looks like with the NFC.
Yeah, I mean that always happens. That we see in sports a lot. That especially like in basketball, it's like all right, Lakers Clippers, like that's the championship. Like whoever you play in the East in the actual championship, it's like it's whatever. That's more of a consolation game.
And it would be huge for Ben if he can get 3. A lot of people have 2. Not many have 3. I don't know who has 3. Brady has
obviously
6.
Brady. Yeah.
Does Montana have 3?
Brady.
Does Young have 3? Who has 3?
I mean, off the top of my head, I mean
Eli has 2.
Doesn't Peyton have what 2?
Peyton has 2.
Yeah, so that 3 is
that 3. You're up there. All of a sudden, he's a Hall of Famer anyway.
Yeah, and honestly, that championship or even deep playoff run might buy him some more time with the Steelers because he's kind of coming towards the end of his deal. I think he's got maybe 1 year after this, if that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's gonna be interesting for the Steelers, and then just for the kind of the landscape of football is can Mahomes once again try to dethrone that changing the guard quarterback? He couldn't do it with Brady. That wasn't his fault. It was defense's fault. And then can he do it now against Big Ben? I think that'd be really, and if, really on the other, cool to watch.
Flip the coin, if Mahomes gets it, then you have 2 by the time you're 24.
Similar to like kind of Russell Wilson.
And then Wilson only had the 1, and then they threw the interception at the goal line, so he stayed at 1.
Should have had the 2.
Should have had 2. All of a sudden, that Mahomes has 2 at 24. All of a sudden, you're on your way to being the best football player of all time, like really quick.
Oh, easy.
Like he can be that by 30 if we really want to play that game.
He'll be on the Yankees by the time he's 32. He'll go on to bigger and better things.
Can you imagine? He'll try baseball. Exactly. He'll pull a TiVo, and it'll be much better.
He'll be bored of football, of winning and making $500 million.
And that will just about do it. Week 10 is coming up. Let's see what we got here on this Dolphins Chargers, Giants Eagles. What's the big game this week? Don't really see one. The Chiefs have a bye. Jets have a bye. I don't really see that huge game that everyone has to see.
Bills Cardinals, I think, will be probably the best one.
I think that's it. The Thursday game is Colts Titans.
That'll
Do
be
with that what you will. That could be a good one. Philip Rivers
decent.
needs to play better, even though the Colts are 5-3.
Vikings Bears on Monday doesn't do much for me. I know they're kind of both decently good teams, but
not
that
the
doesn't
best
do
week,
much.
but we'll watch anyway. That's the thing about the NFL. They don't need to give us what we want. We're just going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, I'm watching anyway. That's a great point.
So we'll watch, and then we'll talk about it next week.
I can't wait.
That's the way it's been working, and we're going to stick to it. So for Matt Farrar, my name is Glen and Matt. Enjoy week 10, and we'll be back next week on another edition of Ice the Kicker.